This
important that we
conference
have to
will
know.
now be recorded.
Hello, is it? Am I audible to you?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay. So why is it important to know about gut microbiota? Because many of the diseases which we are having, either you might think about diabetes, which is endocrinological problem, or something like Alzheimer's, which is a neurological problem. All of these have some relation with the gut microbiome. So something called as gut brain axis and all are existing these days. These are the recent advances. So the more we know about it, we can treat the underlying cause and eliminate a few of the diseases for the patients. So this is something which we are going in advance to know about the disease pathophysiology and pathogenesis, so that we can incorporate the new technologies for treatment of the patient. Okay. So gut microbiome is nothing but some of the microbes which are already present in our intestinal system. Okay. So whenever these microbes which are present in our body as a commensals, they are doing some help to our body system. Whenever this help is disrupted because of either we using the antibiotics or because of some other reasons of diarrhea caused by other pathogens which are more strong enough than the commensal bacteria, these all can lead to damage of the normal gut brain axis or normal microbiome of our intestine. When the normal system is disrupted, what happens is the abnormal pathogens grow up. Whenever the abnormal pathogens grow up, then that causes the disease. Okay. So this is the introduction. The human gut hosts around about like 10 to the power of 14 bacteria, which are belonging to about 1,000 species. See, actually, there is a saying called as we are more of bacteria than we are humans. It means like so many bacteria we are harboring in ourselves. Either it may be on our skin or in our mucosal system, respiratory tract bacterial, respiratory colonization, or our gut microbiome. Everything is there is a commensal bacteria living on our body. So we are more of, see, there are like 1,000 species. It means like there are more of bacteria on us than we. So the genome size of this microbial organ, collectively called microbiome, it exceeds the size of human nuclear genome over 1,000 times. You can definitely expect when there are 10 to the power of 14 bacteria of 1,000 species, how much of the genetic material is available, which is very much more. Even compared to our cells, whenever we take our individual cells, the amount of DNA we have is one set. As there are 10 to the power of 14 bacteria of 1,000 different species, definitely it means like than our nuclear genome, it is more of the microbes genome present in our body. So we are more of like, according to that saying, more of like bacteria or like microbes than ourselves. Gut microbiota is also referred as exteriorized organ, because that is like given a special name or like special entity, like it is a different organ rather than like a single organ. That is also given specific different organ and different methodologies for its treatment and pathophysiology. This performs important biological and metabolic functions like defense against pathogens, role in development of immunity, development of intestinal microvilli, and degradation of non-digestible polysaccharides. Okay. So how is it performing all this? See, whenever the commensal bacteria is there, it is not letting the outer bacteria like Clostridium difficile or any other bacteria which can cause potential harm to our body. It is not letting them to stay in our body. And because of that, it is helping in development of immunity. Not only that, initial stages, the bacteria which are present in the colonies, that is giving some immunity. It is sensitizing our body initially, so that we produce more amount of malt and gal tissues are present in the intestine. More amount of antibody T cell response is there in our system. Because of that, whenever we get some infection or anything, we can deal with it. That is how we develop immunity towards external pathogens. And also development of intestinal microvilli, that is during the earlier stages. And degradation of non-digestible polysaccharides is done by microbiome. there are small chain fatty acids are the only one which are going to be. Long chain fatty acids are not going to be digested by our human body. What happens then? The bacteria is helping in the digestion. Evidence for the role of gut microbiota in regulation of energy homeostasis and fat storage. Germ-free mice, that is raised in the absence of microorganisms, had 40% less total body fat than conventional raised mice, even if their calorie intake was 29% higher. So see, there is these are all the information which we got by dealing with the animal models like germ-free mice and etc., where we are able to see the significant difference where bacteria, the colonized bacteria is present, and other mice where colonized bacteria is there is no colonized bacteria. I mean, there is no colonization of the intestine by a bacteria in case of other mice. In 2 weeks, the conventional colonization of their gut with the cecum-derived or distal microbial community of uh, germ-free mice produced 57% increase in total body fat and 2.3-fold increase in hepatic triglycerides and dramatic increase in IR. Okay. This is all the entire thing about the studies which led us to know about that uh, germ-free mice compared to that of mice which have intestine which are colonized. They both were given certain tasks where they were checked in terms of obesity or in terms of how they are putting on the weight, difference with the protein and fat ratios, all were checked. Everything proved that those mice which are having intestine colonized, they performed better without having any complications in the future. Either it may be obesity or obesity related features. And what is the explanation given for this? Conventionally, it is told like the double the density of small intestinal villi capillaries and enhanced monosaccharide uptake from the gut into the portal blood and stimulated carbohydrate response element binding protein and sterol response element binding protein 1 mediated hepatic and adipose tissue lipogenesis, which all promoted fat accumulation in the liver and adipose tissue. Okay, that is one theory. The other one is the fasting induced adipocyte factor, LPL, is a key enzyme involved in the release of fatty acids from the triglyceride rich lipoproteins in muscle, heart, and fat. Upregulation of adipocyte LPL, lipophospholipopprotein lipase, leads to enhanced cellular uptake of fatty acids and adipocyte triglyceride accumulation. Gut microbiota affect the activity of LPL by influencing expression of FIAP. In germ-free mice, the expression of FIAP is high, whereas microbiota inhibits its expression, which increases the activity of LPL and promotes storage of triglycerides in adipocytes, hepatic lipogenesis, which in turn leads to enhanced accumulation of calories harvested from the diet into the fat and thereby promoting adiposity. So these are the two ideas or two factors which were promoted as the reason why the germ-free mice developed adiposity. The other theory which showed the similar are an increased activity of AMP activated protein kinase, which activates key enzymes of mitochondrial fatty acid oxidation, including acetyl CoA carboxylase and carnitine palmitoyl transferase 1. An increased FIAF induced expression of nuclear transcription factor PPAR coactivator 1, a key coactivator of nuclear receptors and enzymes involved in the fatty acid oxidation. The obese gut microbiome is depleted of genes involved in motility, like chemotaxins, motility proteins, and flagellar assembly, enriched in glycoside hydrolase capable of breaking down otherwise indigestible elementary polysaccharides. in phosphotransferase involved in the import of simple sugars, including glucose, fructose, N-acetyl galactosamine, and in fructosidase capable of degrading fructose-containing carbohydrates such as sucrose to lactate, butyrate, or acetate. Gut microbiota on high-fatty diet may convert dietary choline into hepatotoxic methylamines, reducing bioavailability of choline, which is necessary for the assembly and secretion of ELDS and eventually promoting hepatic steatosis and lipoperoxidation. Okay, and then the last method or like proposed mechanism, gut microbiota may modulate host hepatic and systemic lipid metabolism through modification of bile acid conjugative patterns, directly impacting on emulsification and absorption property of bile acids and indirectly impacting on the hepatic storage and lipoperoxidation through bile acid signaling properties. So these are all the methods by which it was proposed, like the germ-free mice had more tendency towards the obesity because of these certain factors. And coming to the effect on bile acids initially conjugated into amino acids glycine and taurine before secretion into GIT. They inhibit the growth and proliferation of gut microbes. Bacterial enzymes contribute in transforming primary to secondary bile acids. The secondary bile acids are reabsorbed and returned to the hepatic cell for liver for further processing. Bile acids are also involved in binding and activation of different cellular receptors such as nuclear receptor, fracinoid X receptor, and the G protein coupled receptor TGR5. Both these receptors play an important role in modulation of lipid and glucose metabolism in mice. TGR5 signaling in enteroendocrine cell-induced secretion of GLP-1, thus enhancing glucose tolerance and improving liver and pancreatic function in obese mice. Therefore, gut microbiota contributes to the level of obesity and type 2 diabetes by controlling lipid and glucose metabolism through bile acid mediated signaling through the same receptors. Hence, gut microbiota may modulate both sides of energy balance equation, namely energy harvest from diet and storage as triglycerides and energy expenditure through fatty acid oxidation. These all mediate through diet-induced obesity, IR, and diabetes, etc. Whatever the disease. See, this is an important slide. If you understand this, all the points which we told before are at a higher level, which might not be required at your stage, but this one slide which can help you in understanding most of the things, and it is enough for you to remember this particular slide. So just you have to remember, like, gut microbiota can modulate the both sides of energy balance equation, not just like after effects, but also before effects are also present. So immediately after you take diet, it will help in digestion. That is how it will harvest energy harvest from the diet, first point. And the second point comes as energy storage. From once energy is harvested, then it is stored. It is stored in form of triglycerides. That is also held by microbiota. And then after storing, expenditure, while things are required for it to burn, then energy expenditure through fatty acid oxidation is also occurring because of gut microbiota. So the energy balance equation is done with this. So that is this is a very important slide. So you got it?
Yes,
This
ma'am.
slide clear, right? Yeah. Altered gut microbiota composition in obesity. So what did we find? Why are we talking about gut microbiota and all? Because most of the diseases, when we retrospectively looked at the intestinal commensals or like gut microbiome, then we found like there is so much of difference in the microbial colonization in different animals with different diseases. That is which made us think about, like, is there something going on which is related to the microbiome, which is affecting the which is affecting our bodily health and all. So when we had a doubt and we started working on it, then we got to know few of the other facts like this. The human gut contains 1,000 different bacterial species with 99% of total population belonging to 40 species. The bacterial density progressively increases along small bowel from 10 to the power of 4 in the jejunum to 10 to the power of 7 colony-forming units per gram of luminal content at the ileal end, with the predominance of gram-negative aerobes and some obligatory anaerobes. In the colon, the bacteria count reaches to 10 to the power of 12 with predominance of anaerobes. 60% of fecal mass is accounted by bacteria. Despite these observations, research in field has long been hampered by methodological limitations. Conventional culturing techniques can in fact detect only 30% of the total intestinal bacteria. For reasons: the unknown growth requirement of bacteria, the selectivity of the media that are used, the stress imposed by the cultivation procedures, and necessity of strictly anoxic conditions, and difficulties with stimulating the interactions of bacteria with other microbes and host cells. So these are all technical errors which can be encountered while doing this particular study. The difficulties are being overcome by recent culture-independent molecular biological approaches, which are based on sequence diversity of small subunit rRNA uh, gene, 16S rRNA gene sequencing, fingerprinting techniques, PCR and dot blot hybridization, FISH and DNA microarrays. All these methods substantially enhance the detection capabilities of numbers and diversity of human gut microbiota. However, these have their own limitations. Human GIT are dominated by anaerobic bacteria and belong to three bacterial phyla. Gram-positive like Firmicutes is the largest bacterial phylum, comprising about 200 genera, including Lactobacillus, Mycoplasma, Bacillus, and Clostridium species. Acinetobacter, missed by the RNA gene sequencing. Gram-negative bacteroids, including 20 genera. Proteobacteria, Vermiculomicrobia. The prevalence and diversity of bacteria in different areas of the GIT is influenced by different conditions at these sites, and thus microbiota of stomach and jejunum varies with that of the large intestine. And result of the animal models suggests that obesity is associated with the alteration of composition and functional properties of the gut microbiome. When obese mice and lean mice were fed the same polysaccharide-rich diet, obesity was associated with 50% reduction in bacteroids diet and proportional division-wide increase in vermiculites. The microbiota of mice fed high-fat, high-sugar, westernized diet was compared with the microbe of mice receiving a low-fat, high-polysaccharide diet. The Western diet increases the relative abundance of vermiculits due to bloom in the class of moleculites at the expense of bacteroids, inducing an enrichment in the genes enabling energy harvest from the diet. These changes in the microbial composition and its functional properties were totally reversed after a shift back to the original diet. To further assess whether diet by itself can affect gut microbial composition independent of obesity, there were some studies done which were Hallbrand et al. Employed the resistant-like molecule through which he proposed his theories. What is the observation through this is that when the mice were switched from the standard diet to high fat diet, the changes in the composition and functional property of the gut microbe were similar between the wild and the non-wild or domestic mice, indicating that the effects of diet dominated over the obese phenotype. Is gut microbiota composition a cause for consequence of obesity? Is a primary or like main question running right now. Are gut microbiota alteration associated with dietary habits or the pathology of obesity itself? Coming to the answers, fecal microbiota from lean and obese mice were transplanted into the gut of germ-free mice. After 2 weeks, the mice hosting the obese microbiota extracted more calories from the food and showed significant greater increase in their fat mice than the mice colonized with the lean gut microbiota. So this is definitely whatever the studies we talked up to now showed like the lean mice had leaner mice with the microbiota had chances of gaining less amount of fat compared to that of obese mice which are colonized with a different microbiome. This is the thing which we got in the animal studies. Now coming to the human studies, data from human studies were generally consistent with the results from animal models. 12 obese subjects had lower bacteroids and more vermiculades in their distal gut than did the lean control subjects. After randomization to either carbohydrate restricted or fat restricted diets for 52 weeks, the proportion of bacteroids increased over time, mirroring reductions in host weight. Another study employing 154 individuals, a relative depletion of bacteroids and a higher proportion of Acinetobacter compared with the leanness. In another study, Bifidobacterium abundance appeared to be lower in overweight, obese, or type 2 diabetics than lean subjects. Faecalibacterium prasiniti was also lower in type 2 diabetes. Both these bacteria has anti-inflammatory effects. Then next study showed that infusion of microbiota from lean healthy donor temporarily improved insulin sensitivity in individuals with the metabolic syndrome. However, many confounding factors in human studies, uh, hence results are heterogeneous, like not being able to obtain precise control of frequency and composition of meals, complexity of lifestyle in humans. Like they can't keep like humans and keep feeding with the same food, whereas mice they were able to do with feeding, either feeding or like with the microbiome they could play with the mice because they were uh, in the labs. Mechanism linking gut microbiota to obesity and type 2 diabetes mellitus. Chronic inflammation induced by low calorie endotoxemia. Gut bacteria can initiate the inflammatory state of obesity through activity of lipopolysaccharides and a component of gram-negative bacterial cell wall by binding to CD14 toll-like receptor complex. Any problem? Are you able to listen?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
See, TLR4 pathway is for gram-negative lipopolysaccharide proteins. So that is the second messenger signal mechanisms which we have discussed already in our immunology part. So that you can correlate here when I'm talking about this. So gut bacteria can initiate inflammatory state because these are gram-negative bacteria with lipopolysaccharides and which can be picked up by the TLR complex of our innate immune cells. And the relevance of TLR pathway for metabolic disease was confirmed by finding the deletion of TLR4 prevented that the high-fat diet induced insulin resistance. After 4 weeks of high-fat diet, mice exhibited an obese phenotype accompanied by a change in gut microbiota composition and 2 to 3-fold increase in circulating lipopolysaccharide levels and metabolic endotoxemia, since LPS plasma concentration was much lower than those observed during septic shock. And metabolic endotoxemia was reproduced by subcutaneous infusion of lipopolysaccharides. Animal developed the same metabolic abnormalities induced by the high-fat diet, while lipopolysaccharide receptor KO, CD14 KO, mice were resistant to the effects of both high-fat and lipopolysaccharide infusion. In other experiment, change in gut microbiota composition induced by the antibiotic treatment reduced metabolic endotoxemia and cecal content of lipopolysaccharides, correlating with the improvement in obese phenotype in both high-fat feed and obese mice, or like which we have taken for obesity. Human studies were also similar to that of mice studies. Some have suggested that live gram-negative bacteria may be found in the tissues prior to the onset of diabetes. In cohort of 3,280 subjects, 16 DNA concentrations was higher in humans with a predisposition to diabetes. Amount of 16 S rDNA can serve as biomarker for diabetes risk. Anderson et al. Found that a high-fat, high-CHO meal induced a significant postprandial plasma lipopolysaccharide elevation accompanied by increased mononuclear cell expression of TLR4 nuclear factor and suppression of cytokine signaling and an adipokine involved in insulin resistance. A similar grade endotoxemia increased adipose TNF and interleukin-6 concentration and promoted insulin resistance. The increase was totally absent after an American Heart Association meal rich in fiber and fruit was proposed. Factors leading to metabolic endotoxemia. Gut barrier disruption. The paracellular permeability. Alteration in the gut permeability due to increase in paracellular permeability, which in turn is due to alteration in the expression and localization and distribution of tight junctions proteins like occludens zona occludens. Intestinal alkaline phosphate. It plays an important role in lipopolysaccharide detoxification by dephosphorylating the lipid portion of lipopolysaccharides. The expression of IAP was shown to be controlled by gut microbiota. Obesity appears to be associated with increase in IAP activity. An increase in IAP activity is associated with reduction in metabolic endotoxemia. Endocannabinoid system. Most studies endocannabinoid lipids are anandamide and n-arachidonyl ethanamide and 2-arachidonyl glycerol. These all two types of receptors are present like cannabinoid receptors like CB1 and 2. Both lipids are CB1 and CB2 ligands, and with anandamide having a greater affinity for CB1. They have a role in regulation of gut barrier. However, the gut barrier regulation in obesity appears to be CB1 dependent, and CB1 antagonist decreases gut permeability and metabolic endotoxemia in genetically obese and type 2 diabetic mice. Mechanism is by altering the distribution of tight junction proteins. Different nutrients have different pro-endotoxemic potential. A high-fat diet induced a higher increase in plasma lipopolysaccharides compared with that of isocaloric high carbohydrate diet in mice. What they were telling is like a high fat diet had a different microbial genome compared to that of the other one, which is not having the high fat diet and obesity. Fructose containing foods. Mice consuming high fructose solutions for 8 weeks showed a 24 increase in portal endotoxin levels, coupled with significant increase in plasma inflammatory cytokines, hepatic steatosis, and insulin resistance compared with that of controls. Plasma endotoxins increase may derive from enhanced lipopolysaccharide production, microbiota, or from increase in the intestinal lipopolysaccharide absorption. Just a second. Coming to the other modulators of gut microbiota composition, right from the birth itself, the microbial colonization starts occurring. At the birth, there might be certain microbial dominance of the intestine, but gradually it differs as the age increases, as we are exposed to more number of different kinds of bacteria. First year of life has crucial impact on individual gut microbiome. In the prospective study, children becoming overweight by 7 years of age had lower levels of bifidobacterium and higher levels of staph aureus during the first year of life than the infants maintaining a healthy weight. Another study found that response of overweight adolescents to a diet and exercise loss programs was dependent on the initial microbiota prior to the treatment. The fetus in sterile uterus end is colonized by microbes during its passage through the birth canal. Immediately after the birth, baby is exposed to several environmental sources of bacteria: skin, mouth, mother's milk. This initial microbiota changes dynamically during the first months of life, owing to the continuous exposure to different environmental bacteria. Gut microbiota has fully matured by first 2 years of life, coinciding with the weaning from high-fat milk diet to a solid high-carbohydrate diet, and thereafter remains substantially constant throughout the individual's life. Results from the Kola birth cohort and other studies have suggested that the mode of delivery, type of infant feeding, hospitalization, prematurity, and antibiotic use determine the gut microbial composition during infancy. During a natural normal vaginal delivery, infants are rapidly colonized by microbes from the mother's birth canal and feces, while babies delivered by C-section are colonized by environmental microbes from their mother, the air, and transferred by the nursing staff. As a result, infants delivered by caesarean section has fewer intestinal bifidobacteria and bacterioid species protective against obesity and are more often colonized by difficile in comparison with the vaginal delivery infants. Type of feeding. Formula feed infants are more often colonized by Enterobacteria species, Clostridium difficile, bacterioid species, Streptococcus species. Breastfed infants are predominantly colonized by Staphylococcal species, Streptococcus species, Lactobacillus, and Bifidobacterium species. Whether different gut microbial colonization explains the different propensity for obesity from different infant feeding requires further studies. Effect of use of antibiotics. 5-day course of oral antibiotics modifies human gut microbiome up to 4 weeks before it tends to revert to its original composition. Some communities fail to recover within 6 months. Consistent with the use of antibiotics in infants is associated with decreased number of anti-obesogenic and bifidobacterium and bacterioids. After antibiotic treatment, there is slow regrowth of bifidobacterium, whereas bacterioid species are not usually re-established. So this is also the one of the slide which you need to be thinking or like keeping in mind, because in our day-to-day practice we do use antibiotics a lot. So whenever we are using antibiotics, remember that they can cause harm to the bacteria which are already present in our intestine, which can lead to further different diseases. What you have to remember is, as the there can be decreased number of anti-obesogenic bifidobacteria and bacterioids because of antibiotic use, and there can be slow regrowth of bifidobacterium, whereas bacterioids are not usually re-established. This is one of the important line which you have to remember, because as they are not re-established, you will have further problems in the long run. Now, therapeutic potential of manipulating gut microbiota. Gastrointestinal surgery and gut microbiota. Detailed studies were able to link both the preoperative metabolic state and postoperative changes to the gut microbiota composition. Before surgery, high levels of H2 producing subgroup of bacteroids, Privotella, next to high levels of H2 utilizing methanogenic archaea were observed. The transfer of H2 between both bacteria increased the energy uptake by the intestine, as methanogens are capable of removing fermentation intermediates from polysaccharides. This results in greater amounts of small chain fatty acids present to be absorbed across the intestinal epithelium. A small pilot study showed that after surgery, the amounts of both methanogens and Prevotella were lowered and the initial predominance of formiculates were mitigated. The butyrate-producing Fusobacterium prosneti species was shown to be negatively associated with inflammatory markers before and after RYGB, indicating its contribution to a healthy intestine. Changes in the gut microbiota composition is also seen after bowel surgeries. So, antibiotics and surgery, both are causing some harm. So, think about it before you are advising that to a patient. Then coming to prebiotics. Prebiotics are mostly oligosaccharides and non-digestible but fermentable food ingredients that selectively stimulate the growth and activity of one or multiple gut microbes that are beneficial to human host. The human intestinal tract cannot digest the food ingredients, but intestinal microbes ferment the food particles and make it more digestible. Effects of prebiotics have been claimed in all ages, ranging from infants to elderly. Example: short-chain inulin type fructones, oligofructose, wheat-derived arabinoglycans, oligosaccharides. Mechanism: reducing a diet-induced inflammatory state. Topic: effect on intestine. Improvement in distribution and localization of occludin and zonula occludens 1. Increase in the endogenous production of GLP-2 and enteroendocrine peptide, implicating in the regulation of intestinal epithelial proliferation and gut barrier. An increase in the number of cells producing enteroendocrine peptides and epithelial enteroendocrine cells. Also modulate GLP-1, peptide YY, glucose-dependent insulinotropic polypeptide, and ghrelin. Bacteria of Bifidobacterium belonging to the Acinetobacter and Lactobacillus species particularly are known for a response to the administration of certain prebiotics. Prebiotics contain oligofructose, specifically stimulate the growth of bacteria. Administrating of oligofructose totally restored Bifidobacterium levels, reduces the metabolic endotoxemia, improved glucose tolerance, and increased satiety and weight loss. Acrosmania muciphilia was increased by approximately 100-fold. Evidence of this bacteria is inversely correlated with the body weight, type 1 diabetes, bowel disease in both humans and mice. In healthy mice, gut fermentation of prebiotics is associated with a decrease in postprandial plasma glucose response levels. They are prebiotics. What is the difference between the prebiotics and probiotics? Will be one of the questions. So I guess you got it. So prebiotics are more oligosaccharides and non-digestible but fermentable food ingredients that selectively stimulate growth and activity of one or multiple gut microbes. That are prebiotics. What are probiotics? They are food supplements. These are supplements, they are present in the dietary itself, prebiotics. Probiotics are food supplements that contain living bacteria such as bifidobacteria, lactobacillus, streptococci, and non-pathogenic strains of E. coli. When adequately administered, they confer beneficial effects to hosts because of changes in the gut microbiota that are both transient and diminish gradually with time after cessation. Symbiotic studies on probiotics have shown that every probiotic only benefits from selected number of carbohydrates. Amylase resistant starch, for example, increase the number of intestinal lactobacillus bifidobacteria whilst decreasing the number of enterobacteria. From 40 types of bifidobacterium species, Bifidobacteria lactis showed that most growth when combined with this type of starch. This observation has led to production of preparation containing both bacteria, probiotics, and saccharides, prebiotics, both are together called as symbiotics. So, as in a gist to tell, if it is a probiotic, it is a bacteria which we talk. If it is a prebiotic, that is like non-digestible saccharides which are uh, fermented. Both together are in the form of symbiotics. As the prebiotic part of symbiotic is specifically selected on the basis of ability to stimulate the growth of the probiotic part, the effect of probiotics are enhanced. In certain cases, this combination shows synergistic effects. Lactobacillus reuteri is more resistant to bile salts while combined with the soy germ powder. In addition to combination of fructose oligosaccharides with Lactobacillus acidophilus, not only led to an expected increase in the number of lactobacilli, it also caused a growth of bifidobacteria to an even higher extent than the growth of lactobacilli. Now coming to the antibiotics. Antibiotics can influence the composition of gut microbiota up to 2 years after administration. The decrement of intestinal bacteria after using antibiotics causes alteration in the several bacterial-induced metabolic pathways. Tetracyclines resulted in improved glucose tolerance and insulin sensitivity in diabetic rats and obese mice. Ampicillin and norfolxin cause reduction in the hepatic steatosis, liver triglyceride production, and lipogenesis in obese mice. In line, glucose levels normalized and insulin sensitivity increased. Two mechanisms. The first is a reduction in low-grade inflammation. Tumor necrosis factor lipopolysaccharides were shown to negatively correlate with the insulin sensitivity. Glucose intolerance, body weight gain, and fat mass development all were reduced. Antibiotics directly influenced small-chain fatty acid levels, while female mice were administered vancomycin orally, and microbial fermentation of carbohydrates diminished with the subsequent decrease of fecal small-chain fatty acid excretion. Thereby, fecal sampling contained more unfermented oligosaccharides. Microbial transplantation, which is one of the treatment modalities. Fat loss trial. It showed that double-blind randomized control trial, the therapeutic effects of allogenic lean donor feces infusion on insulin resistance in male patients with metabolic syndrome was studied. Beneficial alteration in the glucose metabolism after lean donor transplantation was observed. This offers a new view on metabolic deviations in obese subjects and rationale for novel therapeutic interventions methods directly affecting gut microbiota-induced metabolism. Fat loss 2 trial, a follow-up study has been initiated to study the long-term effects of single versus multiple linear donor feces transplant along the metabolic measures. Conclusion. Obesity and type 2 diabetes are becoming the worldwide epidemics. The current clinical management of obesity is based on targeting the dietary habits, energy expenditure, and related disorders like glucose intolerance, type 2 diabetes, hypertension. But most of the therapeutic interventions are unsuccessful. Unequivocal experimental evidence has revealed the role of novel partner, the gut microbiota, as a potential environmental factor. Various studies demonstrated a link between the gut microbiota composition and body weight, type 2 diabetes mellitus. Although this concept is well established in rodents, more detailed studies in humans enrolling more patients are needed. Many confounding factors like antibiotic use, background diet, physical activity, endotoxin content of the ingested food, meal frequency were limited in human studies. Unlike other endocrine organs, microbiota has intense plasticity and can alter dramatically and rapidly in response to diet. With increased understanding of the key microbiota genes involved in endocrine regulation, it may be possible to use pre or probiotics or other modulatory means to treat or prevent obesity and type 2 diabetes mellitus. So that is about the class on introduction of gut microbiota. So the how we are treating is microbial transplantation, that I haven't discussed much in this area. This is only the mechanism why we got to know about it and how is it working, only the mechanism. So if anything you can ask me. Are you there?
Yes,
Are you
ma'am.
all there? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So you have given your attendance. Okay, that is for hello. That is for your today's class. Um, anything you can message me or you can contact me. You put your attendance in the chat box.